My name is Jane, and I am so pleased to be with you here today. And I'll warn you, I'm a crier. When I preach, I often cry. Just wait a minute, and I will get over myself and keep going. A Roman Catholic priest, a rabbi, and a Presbyterian minister walk into a bar. Not this time. This time, it's a sweatshirt factory. But more about that in a minute. First, I'll just say that it's pretty typical when I try to explain to people what it is I do for a living. It often ends up sounding like one of those jokes, a priest and a rabbi and a minister walk into a bar. That's because the work of the Main Council of Churches, where I serve as executive director, the work of our council, yours and mine, is all about building bridges, making connections, drawing people together from many different groups and communities, identities, traditions, in order to help them collaborate and cooperate in building a more just, compassionate, and peaceful world. And all they do is grounded in the love of neighbor. It's like what Paul was talking about in the excerpt from his letter to the Corinthians that we heard read this morning. And I didn't know until about 3 minutes ago that you all use a different translation than the one that I was using to write the sermon, so you'll get the idea, but the words are slightly different. In the translation that I use, Paul wrote, that you be knit together in the same mind and the same purpose. That you be knit together. Any knitters in the house, by the way? I can only do prayer shawls because it's just a rectangle and there's just 3 stitches, so I'm not a great knitter, but I'm a knitter. I wonder if Paul was. I know the fishermen that Jesus called were, because fishermen were the knitters of that day. That's how they made their nets. But I digress. The Main Council of Churches knits people together, like that priest and the rabbi and the Presbyterian minister and the owner of a sweatshirt factory in an old mill in Westbrook, Maine. But again, more about that in just a minute. You may have noticed that a moment ago I said our council, ours. I say that because you at St. John's are part of us at the council through the membership of the Episcopal Diocese of Maine. Your diocese has been a member of the council for more than 40 years. You weren't there at the beginning in 1938. There were some fights about the Unitarians and the Quakers being with us, but by 1983, y'all had gotten over that and you joined the council. And to be more accurate, you got a different bishop. And then you joined. Yeah, you know? Yeah, and actually, Paul's letter that you heard this morning, that's the kind of stuff he's writing about. And we're not going to go there except for the knit together part, but it's good to know it was happening 2,000 years ago, too. Well, being an us, you and we together, it's a source of strength for that council of ours. We are a coalition of 7 major mainline Protestant denominations. And we are stronger together than we could ever be if each one of our denominations was off on their own, working in isolation. Together, our efforts to create a more just, compassionate, and peaceful community here in Maine have a greater impact on the common good. Of course, our most important strength is our faith in God, who calls us to love our neighbors as ourselves. Which brings me back to the priest and the rabbi and the Presbyterian minister and the sweatshirt factory. Spoiler alert, I am the Presbyterian minister in the story, and it's a true story, and it just happened 4 days ago. And it's a true story that you all are part of, whether you realized it until now or not. Because there is no Main Council of Churches without you. And if there hadn't been a Main Council of Churches, we wouldn't have been on the 4th floor of an old mill that used to make textiles and now is again, with a factory owner and his 150 employees. Why were we there, you and I, and that priest and the rabbi and the factory owner? We were there because 84 of those 150 employees are immigrants. They're all documented. They either have a green card or they have a work permit as part of their asylum-seeking process. Many of them are from Africa, some are from Iran, and some from Latin America, at which point, and Jarrett will appreciate this, I made a complete fool of myself when I met one of the Latin Americans and said the one sentence I know how to say in Spanish, which is, mi hija es guatemalteca, my daughter is a Guatemalan, at which point, brrr, this woman just started talking to me. I don't know what she said, and she finally figured out by the look on my face that I knew one sentence in Spanish. Among these 84 immigrants, their families include 77 children under the age of 18. These workers are part of a trade union. They make a living wage, they have health insurance, a paid vacation every year, and they pay taxes to the state of Maine and to the federal government. Many of them have been with that company since it opened its doors in 2015. And their employer, the owner of the factory, would lay down his life for them. In fact, he has laid down his life for them. Honestly, the more I meet with him and talk with him, I'm reminded of Oskar Schindler. Do you remember the story of Oskar Schindler, who ran a factory in Germany during World War II and used that position to protect the Jews who worked for him? So, when the ice surge began on Tuesday here in Maine, this modern-day Oskar Schindler was prepared to draw on every connection, every network, every relationship he had to try to help protect his workers. And that included calling his longtime friend, Father Mike. Father Mike is a Roman Catholic priest who has served on the board of our Council of Churches and been on our Public Policy Committee. And Father Mike then called me. And then I had a long phone call with this factory owner who said that he'd been raised in a multi-faith family. His dad was Jewish, and that from time to time he had gone to worship at Temple Bethel in Portland, but hadn't had a chance to meet their new rabbi yet. So I kalled the new rabbi and said, there's somebody you need to meet. And I let her know what was going on. You see, that's the knitting, right? I guess I'm a pretty good knitter, I just don't use wool. I was knitting together these people just the way Paul was writing about. And you were there with me doing it too. So that's how, early on Wednesday morning, a priest, a rabbi, and a Presbyterian minister walked in to a sweatshirt factory. We sat down and we listened carefully to their concerns, and we asked what we could do to be most helpful. The owner asked if the three of us, the priest, the rabbi, and the minister, would be willing to come back that afternoon at 3:15 at closing time to be observers and maybe possibly deter ICE agents from trying to abduct any workers as they left the factory to go home. And oh, by the way, maybe you wouldn't mind coming back again in the morning at 7:15 to do the same thing when they're arriving for work. We all agreed, said, yep, we can do that. And we will come every morning and we will come every evening as long as you need us to do that. Then I asked the owner, because it was me, and it was a retired Roman Catholic priest. The rabbi, actually, she could handle herself. But the other two of us, really? I'm not sure that's going to be enough. So I asked him, would you mind or would you like it if more clergy came? And he looked at me and he said, do you really think you could find anyone else to come? Don't worry, Ben. The God Squad will have your back. It totally cracked him up. So now every time we see him, he's like, the God Squad, the God Squad. He thought that. And I didn't have the heart to tell him, like, buddy, every softball team in every seminary, every pub trivia team in every seminary is called the God Squad. It's not that original, but he loves it. And by God, at 3:15 that afternoon, not just 3, but 25 clergy rolled into the parking lot. And we climbed out of our cars into the freezing cold and formed a human barrier, lining the sidewalk from the factory door to a place in the parking lot where white employees were bringing up the immigrant employees' cars behind us. And this is where I'm going to cry. I'm just going to tell you. He's walking up and down the line, and he's like 6 gazillion inches tall. He's this huge man. And he's hugging all these clergy and sort of crushing them in these bear hugs and going, I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. And then we started singing, frankly, because we were cold and we thought it might keep us warm. And when we got to We Shall Overcome, he started crying. I told you I'll get over myself. Just give me a minute. By 5 p.m., we'd gotten every single one of those workers out of the factory into their cars and onto the road. And at 7:15 the next morning, we were back. And even more clergy had turned up because by then, the drums had been beating and people had heard that we were doing this, and not many employees were showing up. And I noticed Ben was like on a cell phone and on walkie-talkies. He actually has spies, retired law enforcement all over town watching. And they call him on his walkie-talkie and say, tell your workers not to come down that street, tell them not to go over that bridge, that's where they are. So that's how he's getting them there safely. But he was on his walkie-talkie and on his phone, and he came back over and he's like, I'm really sorry, guys, but do you think you could stay just a little bit longer? Because now that the workers who were too afraid to come to work have heard that you're here, they say they're on their way. So we stayed. I mean, what were we going to say? Like, no, I'm really sorry, I've got a meeting. We stayed, and all but 14 came to work. It made a difference to them that we would stand up and protect them. You might be wondering if ICE showed up. You bet they did. They've been there every morning. They've been there every night. They circle the block like vultures in their black SUVs. Sometimes they'll pull into the parking lot and idle way at the back and watch us. Sometimes they hide, we know this from the spies, down around the corner across the bridge. They must wonder, why are none of those employees driving over here? Because we have spies. But I guess the God Squad spooked them, just enough that they decided not to risk crossing our line. I told Jared that we were in a signal chat, one of those encrypted chats that the God Squad is, and I was like, yeah, these ICE agents, they know Maine clergy don't play. We've been back on that sidewalk every morning and every evening since, and we'll be back again on Tuesday, but I am so glad he called a snow day for tomorrow. In between the morning and the afternoon on Friday, I drove to LL Bean and bought a coat because I was so cold and I needed a better coat. But it's still really cold. And then, because the God Squad just doesn't know when to stop, we heard from some of the employees they were scared to go to grocery stores. And in less than 24 hours, these clergy had gotten so much food, had gotten shopping lists from each individual person, had people in their congregations go to the grocery store, that it filled the lobby of one of the biggest churches in Portland, and they needed a truck to get it all back to the factory so it can be distributed to the workers and they don't have to go to the grocery store. I wanted to see Ben's face when he opened those church doors and saw the food, but I wasn't there. We'll deliver more on Tuesday. And when I say we, I mean you, too. Because it wasn't just me or the other members of that God Squad who were standing there or shopping. You have all been there with us. You've been there with us. And so have all 7 of the council's member denominations. And knit together with the same mind and the same purpose, we're accomplishing something that none of us could have done all by ourselves, because people pay attention. And the impact that 7 mainline denominations who have 400 churches in this state with 50,000 parishioners, it matters. It has an impact when we show up and we stand up and we speak up together. So I guess the right way I should have told this story this morning is actually a priest, a rabbi, a Presbyterian minister, and the members of St. John's Episcopal Church all walked into a sweatshirt factory on Wednesday morning. That story is just one example of how our council, yours and my council, serves the people of Maine. And it illustrates how we try to live out the mission that we have as a council, and that is to speak with a prophetic voice of faith, connecting people within, through, and beyond the church to create a more just, compassionate, peaceful, and inclusive community in Maine. Rooted in the central value of Hebrew and Christian scripture that we're called to love our neighbor, we carry out that mission in 4 ways: by connecting people, by equipping them to take action, by providing educational opportunities, and by advocating for public policies at the state legislature that promote social, economic, racial, gender, and environmental justice. By the way, the co-chair of our Public Policy Committee is one of yours. It's John Hennessy, the policy director for the diocese. Yeah. We wouldn't be us without you here at St. John's and without your denomination, the Episcopal Diocese of Maine. Your own Bishop Brown, and I was with him yesterday in Lewiston, as was Jarrett. He's appointed Reverend Elaine Hughes. I don't know if you know Elaine, but she is the rector at St. Brendan's in Deer Isle. And she is your denominational representative on our board of directors. So when you have complaints about the sermon today, call up Thomas, call up Elaine, don't call me, call them. You also have 2 other at-large members on our board. Marge Kilkelly from Christ Church in Gardner, used to be Angus King's senior policy advisor, has served in our state legislature for years. She's a force to be reckoned with. And Ed Ray, who goes to St. Albans and Cape Elizabeth, which would make it redundant for me to tell you he's our treasurer, because people in Cape Elizabeth know what to do with money, especially if they're Episcopalian. Well, it's true. They have more money than God over there, I swear. So thank you for all you are doing right here in this place to embody God's love, and thank you for your support of the council through your prayers, your financial support, and your participation. In this next part of the sermon, I'm realizing I forgot something in my car, because I'm supposed to say, if you'd like to learn more, I've brought newsletters and brochures. They're out on the street in my car. I'll leave some before I go today. But you can also just go to our website, mainecouncilofchurches.org, or our Facebook or Instagram pages. And you can go to YouTube and watch our channel, which has videos of a lot of our past programming. So you can, and those are great to use for adult ed classes and youth group classes as well. So thank you again, good people of St. John's Episcopal Church, for being part of us and for allowing us to be part of you. We are truly knit together in the same mind and the same purpose, just as Paul hoped we would be. Thanks be to God for that. Amen. Amen. I only cried once.